Welcome to the second episode in a Legendarium series about 17th century Britain. Today we will be talking about the writing of the King James Bible. When King James took the throne of England in 1603, he found himself ruling a realm that was divided along religious lines. He hoped to unify England and Scotland by commissioning a new edition of the Bible. And while the King James Bible did not bring unity to England and Scotland, it did provide Christianity with a sublime expression of faith and one of its most famous works of literature. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth died, leaving a country that was officially Anglican, but with strong Catholic and Puritan minorities. Catholics hoped for a reunion with Rome, while Puritans wanted to remove all Catholic vestiges from the Protestant Church. The crown of England passed to a distant relation of Elizabeth's, King James VI of Scotland, who became King James I of England. To King James, Catholics and Puritans were not fellow Christians, but schismatics who undermined both church and state. During the royal progress from Holyrood House in Scotland to London, James met with John Reynolds. The church leader presented James with a petition signed by 1,000 churchmen, begging James to reform the Church of England. Reynolds was a Puritan who viewed the current Church of England created by Queen Elizabeth and King Henry VIII as too Catholic in form and ritual. James granted no promises except for a pledge to meet with the petitioners in London. During the ensuing meeting, called the Hampton Court Conference, James chose as broad a spectrum of Christian thought as he could, excluding only Catholics and radical Protestant separatists, those who he viewed as the two extremes of the debates. James hoped to present himself as a unifier by including everybody except the most extreme. Notables debated theology at Hampton Court while kneeling before the king. In the end, James agreed to no reforms. Vestments would not be removed, rituals would remain in place, yet he did agree to commission a new translation of the Bible. When he made this promise, at least 3 Bibles circulated in England. First, the Latin Vulgate. Written in the early 300s, it enjoyed the sanction of the Roman Catholic Church. While the Church still used Latin, it printed copies of the Vulgate in English. The Geneva Bible, translated by John Tyndale and Martin Luther, referenced older Greek and Hebrew manuscripts. However, it suffered criticism for its clear Protestant slant. For example, in a key passage in Corinthians, it replaced charity with love, implying that faith rather than good works was the path to salvation. The Geneva Bible was only half as long as the Latin Vulgate and included commentaries in the margins for personal study, and these commentaries were also of a Protestant slant. The Geneva Bible also had a clear anti-monarchical bias, replacing the word king with tyrant on over 200 occasions. Finally, Queen Elizabeth had appointed Church of England bishops to translate a new Bible, which was published in 1568. While the law required each church and parish to have a copy of the so-called Bishop's Bible, the printing press made it possible for people to buy any of the 3 Bibles that they pleased. Indeed, the familiar 22nd Psalm read 3 different ways to the 3 different groups. In the official Church of England version, it read, "God is my shepherd, therefore I can lack nothing. He will cause me to repose myself in pasture full of grass, and he will lead me unto calm waters." To the Puritans, it read, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to rest in green pasture, and he leadeth me by the still waters." To the Catholics, the 22nd Psalm read, "The Lord rules me, and I shall want nothing. He has set me in a place of pasture. He has brought me up on the water of refreshment." Today, the difference between a shepherd leading people to full pastures and a ruler setting worshippers in a place of greenery appears minor. Yet in a world where politics and religion were often one and the same, 3 Bibles meant 3 political orders. James ordered a uniform translation of the Bible to be done by the scholars of England's universities, then reviewed by the bishops, the Privy Council, and finally ratified by himself. This made the King James Bible one of the first works to undergo peer review. Indeed, King James feared a fragmenting of political and religious authority, one and the same in his mind. He especially feared the Geneva Bible with all its anti-royalist subtext. For the great enterprise, the translators agreed that no scholar would make notes or additions. Scholars at Oxford and Cambridge University set to work on translating individual chapters, which they then presented to one another. At meetings of the translators, heated debates could erupt over phrases or even a single word. Since 4 and 5 people could not read at the time, the translators also considered how their passages would sound when read aloud from the pulpit. The translators used both earlier translations and ancient Greek, Latin, and Aramaic documents. After the scholars debated all key points, a committee of high churchmen in Westminster Abbey compiled them into a final translation. The King James Bible provided Christianity with some of its best-known turns of phrase. These include, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And the Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and I am helped. Therefore my heart exults, and with my song I shall thank him." Unfortunately, the first printing of the King James Bible saw one of the most infamous typos in history. The printer published the commandment, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," in the books of Exodus as "Thou shalt commit adultery." This so-called wicked Bible was immediately recalled by the authorities. The publishers faced heavy fines, which led to their bankruptcy. Thankfully, that typo was corrected in future editions. King James hoped that his new translation would discourage rebellion and promote unity. And while later generations embraced the King James Bible as a great work of literature and a sublime expression of Christian faith, it failed to heal the divisions within King James' realm. Indeed, these political and religious splits continued to fester throughout King James' reign and eventually exploded into civil war during the reign of his son King Charles I. Nonetheless, the King James Bible endured and became a staple of modern Christianity because of its beautiful language and a lack of bias towards either Protestant or Catholic Christianity, allowing readers to come to their own conclusions about their faith. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.